So my name is Ilaria Boncori. I am currently a professor in organization behavior and human resources management at the University of Essex in the UK. And I also serve with Christine as co-editor of the journal Culture and Organization, which is hosting this special issue. Christine, can I go next to you?
Hello, my name is Kristen Williams, and in addition to working with Ilaria on the editorial role with Culture and Organization, I'm the director of the FC Manning School of Business at Acadia University and an associate professor in the field of management. I also hold a visiting scholar appointment with the University of Eastern Finland.
Brilliant. Federica, do you want to go next, and then Maria?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Federica Scholz. I'm an associate professor working at Applied University in Utrecht in the Netherlands. I'm an associate editor of Culture and Organization. So you see a lot of us have joined forces, and I do a lot on this topic. So I'm excited that we can bring you along and invite you to join us in this discussion on it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maria, and I am an industry fellow and researcher at the Center for Decent Work in Industry at the Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, Australia. I am joining you from Brisbane. It is night here. I am not part of, I'm a guest editor on this special issue, also operate in the space and have been researching in it for a while, so quite excited to see it come through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited to be working with this team of co-editors, and I know that we all espouse an ethos of like collaboration and kind of enabling development. So please feel free to ask questions. You can interrupt us during the session, or perhaps we can leave them to the end if that's okay as well. So feel free to use us in the nicest possible way to get all the information you need now or before the submission deadline. So the plan today is to give you a little bit of introduction about the journal, so the type of work we publish, because obviously a special issue is housed within a journal and is in keeping with the journal ethos and type of publication. Then we will tell you more about the special issue call for papers, about researching and writing differently, about the approach we take to disability, and about possible topics that we think might fit with the special issue, but we're very open to alternative proposals and additional themes. We'll then have a bit of information about the submission, and then we'll open up to questions and kind of explorations of ideas from authors or potential authors and those with an interest. Is that all right? So I think without further ado, Kristen is presenting the next part. You're muted.
Sorry about that. It's a pleasure to kick this off. We wanted to explain a little bit about the journal so that you understand, in writing for this special issue, you're also writing for our journal. And so our journal's ethos is decidedly critical and qualitative. We embrace creative modalities which challenge the boundaries of traditional academic approaches. We specifically look for manuscripts that have developed qualitative, empirical, and theoretical vocabularies. We're looking for manuscripts that go beyond description to offer novel contributions, exciting applications of methods, or challenge the boundaries of current theorizing. Therefore, we welcome both theoretical and empirical manuscripts, but also papers that make methodological contributions or challenge the way that we write and think about organizations and society. We favor submissions that engage critically in a variety of topics. The journal has published broadly on experiences of organizations and processes of organizing. We publish research on culture and related social phenomenon. As an interdisciplinary journal, our authors are hailing from such disciplines as the humanities, social sciences, management and organizational studies, philosophy, and the performing arts. In terms of the kinds of submissions we accept, we're actually pretty broad in that respect. We accept original articles, and these include a range of research articles through to specialty articles such as letters, editorials, essays, book reviews, cases, review articles, poetry, pictorial work, fictional work, and even more than that. We are supported by 2 co-editors, Ilaria and myself, and several wonderful colleagues serving in the role of associate editors. And we have a fantastic editorial board. So we especially appreciate this special issues contribution and the potential contribution. Our special issues in general within culture and organization are very important to the journal. They develop strands of scholarly discourse, and we're very much looking forward to what develops from this special issue call for papers. Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to activate the presentation view. So building on what Kristen has just talked about, this means that we are not looking for quantitative papers. We're not looking for kind of like mainstream positivist descriptions. We're not looking for models or frameworks that are, you know, hypotheses to be tested and so on. So we are really looking at the more nuanced, qualitative, kind of like in-depth studies around themes in general, and definitely around this particular theme. And we also don't really publish simple literature reviews. So turning to the call for papers, you will see in the title that we have chosen the title of Researching and Writing Differently About Disability. So already we're trying to problematize notions around disability. And our kind of like follow-up subtitle is Interdisciplinary Inclusion Perspective and Approaches. So we wanted to keep this very broad because one of the characteristics of cultural organization is that it draws from a lot of different fields of inquiry, subjects, and we welcome that cross-pollination from the humanities, from the social sciences. However, it is important to highlight that although the papers don't have to be rooted in organizations and business, they have to do with organizations or ways of organizing. So if you think about it, inclusivity, disability, they are ways of organizing people, resources, time. So if you are drawing from another field of inquiry that is not management organization studies, so you can be, you know, coming from law or, you know, media studies or anthropology or sociology, still think about a link to organizations or ways of organizing, because that is what the journal is about. So you still have to kind of like consider that that is kind of the context we're operating in. So again, you know, ways of organizing is quite broad and can be interpreted in many ways, and we'll see like ways in which we thought this can be articulated in the themes later. The call for paper starts with in the title and in the paragraphs with researching and writing differently. So we wanted to explain a little bit what we mean about researching and writing differently. So this has increasingly been an interdisciplinary kind of like wave or movement, some say, of researchers that look to academic writing and academic work beyond the normative standards of kind of like mainstream publishing. So what this kind of like group of colleagues and kind of like this is like increasingly being published across a range of journals at all levels. What this means is highlighting silenced or neglected topics. So for example, in this case, it can be around disability, it can be about kind of like the social aspects of disability, can be around the embodied aspect, the affective aspect of disability, and particular disabilities that are silenced within the disability studies literature themselves. So it's really shedding light on kind of like marginalized perspectives, highlighting the perspectives of the people, the participants. So looking at including voices, experiences, and perspectives that sometimes go against kind of like the grain of the mainstream. So what does it even mean to be marginalized, and who is marginalizing whom, and what are the points and the dynamics of privilege and power in these discourses? So these are all considerations that are very often part of researching and writing differently. So in this kind of like critical approach to kind of like looking at power and positionalities, then researching and writing differently can also become a form of activism in academia and political engagement in kind of like unsilencing and highlighting issues that very often don't see the light in kind of like top journals or publications in general. Researching and writing differently also focuses on how we write, not just what we write. And so very often we have papers that are written in a way that is more evocative. So for example, through autoethnography or personal narratives. So language that is also more approachable and is not kind of academies that is very, full of jargon or like inscrutable terminology. So it's a way of democratizing what we write and how we write, and also making it more accessible to different types of audiences. It's also writing that acknowledges the fact that to us, the embodied and affective experiences in the workplace or in organizing are not kind of like under the cognitive ones in terms of importance. So we feel in researching and writing differently that kind of the body, emotions, and intellect are all part of the experience, and we don't prioritize cognitive, intellectual knowing over embodied and affective knowing. So we also have a particular interest, for example, around the sensory experiences, like, for example, sensory ethnography, visual ethnography. And so these are all aspects that can be highlighted both in studies that like focus on the researcher. So for example, if there are any researchers who have a disability, they want to share their own experience of either researching as someone with a disability or researching disability as someone with disability. Those type of contributions are also very welcome. So personal writing is absolutely welcome. And this is also linked to kind of like unconventional methods. So very often researching and writing differently is nested in this really in-depth qualitative work that can be narrative-based, like poetry, for example, or autoethnography, or it can be rooted more in like visual methods, like arts-based methods, and it can be film, it can be collage, it can be drawing, it can be photoethnography. So it can be a lot of different methods used that go beyond the kind of like classic interviews or case studies. Not that there is anything wrong with interviews and case studies, so those are really welcome as well. But we are kind of like open to experimentation in terms of methods. And researching and writing differently also considers the way in which we research and we write. So, how we collaborate with each other, the ethics behind the way we work together, and the relationality of our work, how we read differently, how we cite differently, how we collaborate in a different way that is more kind of linked to inclusive aspects of our work that goes a little bit against the neoliberal kind of framework of today's academia. So this is kind of like the framework in which we want to locate our kind of like disability focus for the special issues. So we are not looking on, you know, a categorization or framework or model of disabilities. We're looking for something that is definitely a bit different. And now Federica and Maria will talk us through the theme of disability for this special issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I might just take this forward from here. So just building on what you were saying, I'll talk a little bit about how the call for papers and in the special issue sort of fits within and also relates to the broader literature in critical disability studies. Now, of course, we know that there is a wide range of perspectives in influencing how disability is defined, experienced, understood, and interpreted. But as we know, it traditionally sort of boils down to three common or primary models of disability that I'll just sort of give you a little bit of an overview of. These models generally include the medical model, where disability is actually viewed as a defect or illness that needs to be corrected or cured. In the medical model or the medicalized model, disadvantaged is actually individualized and perceived to be a result of the illness or impairment of the individual. In direct contrast to the medicalized model is the affirmative model, where difference and impairment is seen as a positive social identity. And within this model of disability, diversity of bodies, of minds, and experience is actually recognized and embraced quite positively to construct both individual identity and then also the identity of a collective or a group. Essentially, the affirmative model challenges the notions of the medicalized models that impairment or defect is a problem that needs to be fixed or cured. And then finally, one that we're quite familiar with is the social model, where the experience of disability is associated with the social and systemic barriers and limitations in varying societal contexts, which have a disabling or an exclusionary impact on the individuals with disability. And it is that's the approach that we were encouraging in this. It's the social model that underpins the spirit of the special issue. It aligns with the critical approach where disability is actually understood as a cultural, political, social phenomenon across societal contexts. Essentially, it's influenced by the normative assumptions, the ideologies and structures and organizing norms that create various forms of oppression and exclusion for people with disability. Frederica, will I believe I'll just expand on that a little bit further?
Yes, thank you. And you touched on how we define disability, and I think the social model is also a way of how you should do research, right? And Ilaria touched on that. So very much emancipatory research, inclusive research. So sharing the research process with disabled researchers or giving them, you know, the overview of it, in charge of the research. And I think that's important, that research that we create is something we do for the community, to change something, to achieve something, and not just because of the way we do research. And I think it goes with more approaches that we encourage ourselves in our research. Some of the topics, the dialogues that a lot of us have been touching on, we just made this visual here for you to have a look into. So critical approaches really much touch on, okay, so how is disability understood? I'm from the social model camp. I'm open about this. So I very much see people as disabled because of us, because of society, and how we kind of create barriers and don't allow everyone to be part of a society. And as Maria said, this is, I think, the entrance point of what we want to see in your studies, that you also view it from that perspective, that we challenge medicalized understanding and very much make it about, all right, so what can we do about it? Let's change what's happening. Let's get in action. So also more action embodied research. I myself have done a lot on ableism, ableist norms, so very much going at the social norms, challenging social norms and attributes that prioritize non-disabled over disabled individuals. So very much, for instance, looking in organizations, and I myself looked at recruitment practices. So how are they disabling? So what are the norms embedded in these practices, and how can we challenge that? So that's something that we would love to see in some of the research that comes through in our special issue. Also, the notion of ability. That's something I personally haven't dived too much into, but looking at traditional ideas of ability and disability, and then advocating for more inclusive understanding of these values, and focusing on diverse abilities and experiences. That could also be a focal point of some of the studies. And then there has been a lot on disability or disableism and othering. And I guess here we want to see on, okay, so what can we do to overcome this othering? I just read a paper on the other. So there's a lot that you can touch on regarding the othering of individuals, and how, for instance, inclusion practices create this other if you don't understand that a lot of the inclusion practices are based on ableist norms. So you can actually go also very deep into your paper, make it also very much, how do we challenge these norms? So what do we have to do to go about it? And these are some of the aspects that focusing on this, on the critical lens of disability. So it's about, so what can we do to change it? And there's a lot we can do, and we want to know from you what you feel like that should be, or how that should look like. So it's very much giving community the voice in helping us challenge what's currently happening, and hopefully to create a more inclusive space for everyone.
Thank you. And indeed, as Federica Maria mentioned, so we, in keeping with the journal's ethos, we want to kind of like problematize taken for granted notions around disability. We want to perhaps also encourage you to challenge the status quo and perhaps imagine alternatives. So, you can take like an onto-epistemological approach that is theoretical. You can use, empirical data. You can do a mix of both. That's completely up to you. We really welcome kind of like different empirical kind of like places that are perhaps not as visible as well, different cultural backgrounds and so on. So the first thing of like possible themes that we imagined for this special issue, but as I said, please don't take this as a fixed list. These are just suggestions of things that might resonate with you and your research. So the first thing is considering what counts as disability in organizations and organizing, and who makes that decision. So what counts as disability? How do we count it, and for whom? Then, as we mentioned before, is looking at reflections on the inclusive researcher in disability studies. What does it mean for the researcher, for the researched, for kind of like practices of othering, positionalities, in-groups, out-groups? Are we looking at othering? Can we engage with what Daniel Erickson and Monica Costera called alternate ethnography, a different way of like being more inclusive in how we do ethnographic studies that is kind of like welcoming and including and repositioning the other, not as a distant other. What can the senses tell us about the experience of disability in organizations? What can we learn from the senses that sometimes is kind of like positioned on a lower scale of kind of like hierarchies to knowing from the mind rather than from the body and the senses? And then how can experimental narrative or arts-based methods help us illuminate marginalization and stigmatization in disability? So can we learn something more or different through narrative or arts-based methods that are not the ones that we routinely use in our research. Other points of reflection is kind of looking at the nuances of experience across and within disabilities. So obviously there are different types of disabilities that are visible, invisible disabilities, physical, non-physical disabilities. So, you know, we also are very much interested in kind of like specific reflections on disability. As Federica mentioned before, we wanted to also problematize kind of like what we understand and what the norms are around inclusion. Is inclusion really inclusive, or is it about assimilation and accommodation and integration from the disability or people with disability into the norm of what is kind of like the mainstream of an organization? So is the burden of inclusivity and inclusion actually on the individual, or should we think how we can change organizations and ways of organizing? Obviously, we would like to problematize the notion itself of disability. I think that has become quite clear throughout this presentation. And we also wanted to really highlight intersectional experiences of disability in the workplace in terms of like categories of difference, so like race, sexuality, gender, and so on, but also in terms of those identities and categories of difference that are not formal categories of difference legally. So, you know, different types of experiences. So for example, you can think of foreignness or people with caring responsibilities, or, you know, different lived experiences that can be, you know, within categories of differences that are recognized by the law, but don't necessarily have to be. And then finally, a few more points to consider. So dynamics of power, agency, and vulnerability in relation to disability. So what does vulnerability mean, for example? What does empowerment mean? And what does agency mean in relation to disability? And do these change across a lifetime? Do they change in relation to different groups? Do they change, you know, in relation to different work environments? This is obviously also linked to disclosure, secrecy, and confidentiality, especially in terms of invisible disabilities, and obviously linked to like stigma and taboo and discrimination, whether it's direct or indirect discrimination. And, you know, how can we, either in our work as academics or, you know, more broadly, what does disability activism, advocacy, allyship mean in terms of disability, both in theoretical ways and in practical ways? So these were just some ideas that we hope will spark your like curiosity and will resonate with your own research, but we are very, very open to other options. These are just some like practical things that we wanted to clarify. So as it has been kind of like our practice in culture and organization, we want to take a very kind of like friendly developmental approach to our special issues. So as a journal, we try to avoid the kind of like publish in peril, kind of talk to the hand rejection type of approach to publishing. So we want to try to give kind of like constructive, formative feedback and kind of like help you develop your work. So we would encourage everyone to send us abstracts by the 11th of November. And these are just like 500 words, including references. So it's quite brief, just to kind of like give us an idea of what you're working on, if the ideas, kind of approaches, methods, you know, epistemological stances fit with the journal and the special issue. And if, for example, someone else is working on a very similar topic, we can kind of like try to guide you to understand kind of like your niche. We can kind of maybe highlight some aspects that you might want to develop further. So the abstract submission is via email. to us, and then we will send you some formative feedback, and the feedback can be, you know, just written in an email, or we can also have a chat about it. And it's really just to help you develop your article. Then the formal deadline, and this will be done on the Scholar One portal. So this will be a formal article submission. Make sure you choose the special issue when you're doing your submission. And the formal deadline is on the 17th of February. So you got lots of time. We wanted to give you lots of time to kind of like think about your paper, develop it, or, you know, if there are aspects that you are considering of your current research to develop further. The formatting and the submission requirements are the standard ones for a cultural organization. So please have a look on the portal, because it gives you lots of detail about the preparation of the article. But broadly speaking, in terms of length, is between 8 and 12,000 words. And we have open access options as a journal. What happens in terms of kind of like the life cycle of a special issue? Once we have all the submissions, we will review them amongst us, and then we again don't take like a very abrupt rejection type of approach. So there might be some articles that are not suitable, so those that get rejected, usually because they are, you know, they use kind of like either a very positivist approach, or they're not critical at all, or they use quants methods. So like it could be that, you know, the paper is just, it doesn't fit the special issue of the journal. And it's really important that you also kind of like get into a conversation with the literature in the journal. We have a special issue that's recently come out on embodied writing, an embodiment that might, for example, you know, speak to your work on this. But also, you know, if there are special issue papers that are not quite right for the special issue, but we think have lots of potential, they're like good quality papers that would fit cultural organization, then what we would do is redirect them to a general issue. So we wouldn't just reject kind of like good quality papers that are interesting for the journal anyway. So we always offer that option if colleagues are interested. And then for the special issue papers that we have selected for the special issue, then we review them within the team, and then we assign reviewers. So then they go out to reviewers, excuse me, and it's normal to have a couple of rounds of revisions to kind of like enhance your manuscript and kind of like develop it to its best possible status. And then once the papers are accepted, they're published online first, so you will not need to wait for kind of like the final issue to be published. I think the final issue is due in 2026, if I'm not mistaken, Kristen. She's nodding. And the papers will be published online first on the website. And that's the case for all cultural organization papers. The papers who, you know, after 1 or 2 rounds of revisions might still need a bit of TLC and development. If they have really good potential, they're good papers, they just need a bit of, you know, more time and development, so they don't fit with the very strict special issue kind of like deadlines and timelines. Again, we might instead of rejecting them at that point, we might just refer them for a general issue. So support them to publication via the general issue of the journal rather than within the special issue. Okay, so I think this is all we had to kind of offer in terms of like the briefing for the special issue, but we wanted to hear from you participants, if you had any questions, if you had any ideas that you wanted to share with us. We would be really delighted to answer any questions. And please feel free to like unmute yourself and speak, or put it in the chat if that's more comfortable, whatever suits you best. Any questions or comments?
I'll just go ahead and start till the as long as people keep thinking about it. My question is simply procedural. If somebody doesn't submit the abstract and directly submits the paper, is that okay?
Excellent submission question. Thanks, Munib. Yes, I mean, they can submit the paper directly. We would always recommend sending us the abstract so we know what's coming in and we can support you in the development of your paper. But if someone has a magnificent idea a month before the special issue deadline and they haven't had a chance to send us an abstract, of course they can still submit a paper. It just means they will receive less support from us in the development of the paper.
And I think they could also, even if it's past the abstract deadline and they intend to submit to the special issue, you could reach out to us with your abstract and say, before I submit this, would you mind giving us some comments and feedback? I think we can be flexible about that.
Oh yeah, and also like if people just want to chat, it's also, we're all humans and I'll be behind us a screen here, but we're really happy to just have a chat and provide informal feedback before submission, whether you have sent an abstract or not. If that's more conducive than sending an email and an abstract, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or ideas that you might have for a paper?
I guess a question. So I am a little bit new to qual research. I come from the quant world, all disability-oriented research. But so this piece of research is my first sort of foray into that I would be considering submitting. And it does come from a quant origin, but there was a bunch of unresolved pieces that I just felt like don't capture the breadth and voice of this demographic and community. And so it's now been supplemented with this qual piece. But I can't imagine me writing this without some reference to the original origin piece, because it very much informed the questions that I'm trying to answer or the experience I'm trying to capture. Does that still feel like it? I know that there, it's not a quant journal or special issue. Do you think that would still fit in there? And maybe this is a better, like, I could give more descriptive space to, if I scheduled a phone call with one of you separately. And I'm very happy to do that too, if that's a better option to talk through it. But thoughts on that?
So I'll try to answer, but please feel free to reach out and we can have a separate chat. So we're not demonizing quant's work. Like, it's absolutely valid as an approach. It's just like seeking different answers through different methods. So it's absolutely fine to say, we were conducting this study and this is what we found and this is what else we wanted to explore. The important thing is that the paper is not about the quant's study. So if the quant study is kind of like the framing background, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry. It's just, that's not going to be the focus of your paper. So I hope that helps.
I think also something else to consider, Zoe, is that quants, because you probably did a large study with lots of data, I'm assuming. And so you might not have gone very deep, and maybe that's what's inspiring you to play with this new set of data. So I would really sit with that data and think about those deeper insights, because one of the challenges we have with the journal when people do submit qualitative research and we find ourselves rejecting those papers, it's often because the qualitative paper has not gone deep enough, has not been critical enough. So that might actually be the stretch in your work, is to how to get to those deeper insights and how to reflect on some of the things that maybe weren't possible because of the quantitative approach. Yeah.
Thank you. If I do want to get in touch with all of you, what's the best? Is your email on the special issue call, or okay, I'm seeing nods. Thank you so much for your advice.
No worries. I'm putting my personal email for work in the chat if you want to get in touch with me. Otherwise, we have the general email address in the call for
special
paper.
issue.
So, yeah, so
Yeah.
feel free to use either.
Yeah, I guess maybe to add to this question is also about how would you like to then use the data? Like, how do you want to write about it? And the question is, can you do it yourself or do you need more input? So thinking about adding a qualitative additional aspect to the data to make sense of it would be kind of an option I could see to make it more qualitative. But we have a hand up. Ren, yes, please.
There's
Good
also a
morning,
question in the
everyone.
chat. Sorry.
Yes, thanks,
All right.
Monibia.
If we have two maybe abstracts that we want to submit and run by you, is that acceptable
Yes,
to
of
submit
course.
more than one? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
No, you're welcome. And Eva had a really good question in the chat. So in terms of like articles of cultural organization that we can recommend. So we don't want to give you a fixed structure and like a to-do list because we want you to kind of try to experiment, but there's lots that you can read both within CNO. So I mentioned that special issue on embodied writing that has lots of amazing papers that are written differently. I think, Christine, has your special issue come out or is it coming out shortly?
It's in the new, it'll come out in the new year, but that will have a lot of examples of writing differently. And so there's plenty of examples within the journal. And so I think the trick is to read some articles within the journal. And you might not be doing a subject matter search for disability studies. You might be doing a subject matter search for writing differently or novel applications of methods. But that would be my approach if I was trying to figure out how to engage with the literature at CNO and looking for inspiration from other authors.
Sorry, I was reading my bookshelf just to give you
The books, show the
Sorry.
books.
I always do that. So in case you're looking for kind of researching and writing differently inspirations, there is this book edited by Alison Pullen, Jenny Helling, and Nancy Harding that came out a few years ago on writing differently. There is this wonderful book edited by Monica Costera on how to write differently. This one. Oh, hi, Monica, you're here. And then I wrote this little book recently on researching and writing differently more broadly. But there are increasingly researching and writing this. So if you like look for writing differently as kind of like a keyword, you will find, you know, organization, management, learning, Tamara, you know, even human relations has, you know, articles
Yeah,
that
okay.
are like drawing on autoethnography and personal narratives. So really it's like finally I remember, so when I was doing my PhD now a few years ago, I was told that engaging with autoethnography would be career suicide, and I'm still here. So I made professor, but you know, increasingly it's you know, maybe not predominant yet, and it's not quite, you know, accepted in all academic contexts, but you will find in so many more examples that you would have even, you know, 10, 15 years ago. So we don't want to be prescriptive in terms of how you write and the structure and, you know, what you use. So, you know, I think it's important for us that you find your way is part of the ethos of the special issue as well. Obviously it needs to be something that readers can access and understand, hopefully. But there are lots and lots of examples both in CNO and other journals.
This is very helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
You're
and
very welcome.
in gender work organization are also so many. I mean, Alison Pullen, when she was editor, they also pulled a few over there. So that's also another outlet you can have a look, and that has a bit of a different setup, but it gives you maybe some inspiration. And I guess what I always like, I started doing this a few years ago, and I started off with a poem, and my paper doesn't have the poem in it anymore. Okay, not sure why, but it opted out. So think also about what creative thing would you like to do and let it out, because this is the chance on actually doing things differently also for yourself. And I love the whole, I still want to do a poem, it's still on my list, but you know, it ended up in more personal vignettes and visual drawings, and there's a lot also on comics and fictional stuff. It's like be creative. Just let your creativeness play around here. This is the space to do it.
Absolutely. I can't agree enough. And I think, it can also be like a fun way for you, like finding like a joy of experimentation in your academic work. And I think, this is the space to do it. I think, we are all really excited about the possibilities that we will find in these papers. And, this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something that is open in terms of disciplinary boundaries, in terms of topics, in terms of highlighting something that might be challenging to publish elsewhere, that we think enriches our academic community and our body of knowledge as a whole. So yes, please experiment away.
No, thank you. And that's really inspiring. And I have two wonderful co-authors. So we're getting together and thinking how we can do that. So today's has been very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments or ideas that you might have? Please feel free to share the call with colleagues and, also like really early career colleagues. We're really happy to support them in the journey. And, I think I published my first article in Culture Organization a while ago, my first solo article. So, it is a friendly space with an amazing editorial community. So, and some of our associate editors are here as well. So, it's really, as much as possible an enabling space.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe adding to that, if you're not sure now, but you're thinking about it, just reach out.
Yeah.
Just get in the talk, and if we have an idea, we sit down. But based on my 1 year now with culture and organization, I can see that this is not the space where you get rejected. Of course, you have to do your work, but there is really much opportunity to advance and get it out there. So that's how I feel.
You
Luca.
get rejected sometimes, but not,
Yeah,
not as a
but
default position.
no,
Yeah.
no, that's what I meant. It's not
Yes,
like
I know,
reviewer,
I know, I know.
it's not reviewer 2 is in the house, there's a,
Yes.
so that's what
Yes,
my
you don't
statement.
get reviewer 2 and editor 2 in the house. Luca, ciao. How are you today?
Hi. Hi. It's
Hi.
it's the two of us.
2 for 1.
No, we were wondering in the list of topics you overview, there's no mention to caregiving. But we're wondering if that's a topic that can be of interest.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more what you mean about caregiving, as in caring, people who offer like carers for people with disability, or kind of like ethical issues around care with disability, or with all of these are interesting, but
In this case, it's more related to care work and professionals who work in a legal or welfare system as professionals with people with disability to support and take care. Our research is related to this topic, especially when this has to do with legal professionals. So actually, yeah, in between application of law and affective aspects of caring, also of discrimination, and of like feeling the emotional state of people with disability in front of injustice, in front of
Mhm. Yeah, sounds really interesting.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other ideas or comments? No. No. as we said before, please feel free to reach out, whichever way is more convenient to you. And I'll just put up the slide again with the deadlines. We have the call for paper on the website. So the call for paper is on culture and organization. In case you need any help with any of the context or resources or any of the books that I've mentioned today, just let me know. I'm always happy to send an email or a reference. Otherwise, thank you so much to Munib and CMS in Touch for hosting us today. Please follow CMS in Touch on social media and on Eventbrite. I'm part of the CMS in Touch team as well, and we really treasure the opportunity of kind of like sharing and democratizing research in a way that involves and includes as many people as possible. Thanks, Christine, for sharing the link to the special issue in the chat. The recording of this session will be on our CMS in Touch YouTube channel very soon. And I hope to be reading your abstracts in November. Thank you all, and thank you to the wonderful editorial team with Maria, Christine, and Federica. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
And you.